Well, I haven't posted it yet, but I took video when I assembled this sway bar, part of the work I've done building this 71 MG Midget here, of course. And of course it was bound to happen. I put an absolute monstrosity of a sway bar compared to the little wimpy noodle that was on here that I swear this thing leaned more than that Morris Minor that I had. I was so unimpressed the first time I drove this that I didn't hesitate to put this 7/8 sway bar. Of course, realizing the frame isn't anywhere near that strong, and sure enough, the little welded nuts. I mean, this is kind of an absurdity. That little piece there welded in as sheet metal is not going to prevent severe lean when you put a big strong sway bar, and I knew that, but I'd eyeballed it before, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to design a mounting for it that strengthens it considerably, and we won't have this happening again. I really like the way it cornered. This kept it cornering absolutely flat. It was a complete transformation in the way that I enjoy driving. So the scoop is pretty strong dual 3/8 24 welded in nuts here that support the bumper bracket. So that's a pretty stout area. This is kind of a mock-up angle iron like this, supported and bolted up here, and then give the ability to bolt the sway bar down here in an ideal location, which is actually not exactly where this one was. It kind of forced it to work at a weird preload. But I'll show how this works, and we'll make it strong enough that this car can handle the handling improvement. You can see the remains of where the other one of these blocks were sort of welded to the frame, and what I'm doing here is removing the other side because the mounts I make will work for even the standard sway bar, a much stronger arrangement, and that's going to get in the way. I'm just using this little old Makita angle grinder. Well, after bringing yet another tool into the into the mix here, I do finally have it to where I managed to break through the welds on this side. You can see that with the other side not even all that carefully cleaned up on the weld. I have pulled that off the frame on the one side, so now that we can do a little bit of that sort of thing. Once that's out of the way, 3/16 2x2 inch angle iron. That might be all that's needed. So the plan is to hold it down below to better align the bar. Need to be a bit lower on the mounting, and also to give myself room above this bracket before the frame to fit either the head of a bolt or reach in and put a nut to hold the sway bar. I'm going to go to a larger size up here. These were 5/16 24 into the frame up here. Weak. We'll do at least 3/8 24 through our 1/4 inch steel support bracket. Let's see how that looks. All right, progress report. Let's take a look here. I've bolted the other side up. You can see here this is just a stout piece of angle, and I'm going to pick up these two strong front bumper mounting. These are tubes, solid steel tubes that are welded all the way through the front of the frame, and so I made this long enough to put a bolt back over here too on that upright, which I can get to from the inside to put a nut. And we can see here I've got the sway bar supported up against the other side. Just fit right in there. I drill these right to size, and just very careful to align the center punch and such. Let's see if I hit it right. Just barely a large enough hole, 3/8. Hey, there we go, look at that. In my hand. Now there's this little tow hook that will pick those up as well. But for now, I want to bolt this up so that I can locate where to put these two holes. And it's a little bit fore and aft here that'll allow the proper amount of movement here as this comes up. And it should significantly strengthen that and keep the bar from tearing off the frame, certainly. And just quickly here, I've got it all bolted up, and we can see that I can raise my little screw jack supporting it here to put load on it. I'm going to squeeze it out to the outside. You can see here I'm going to put the bolts close to this strong vertical. I don't want them way out here, even on this 3/16, super stout bracket. So let's take a look here. Bring this up. Yeah, I got my big trusty Sharpie. You go right on the underside. With this located, I'm just going to try. We'll see if there's any value to this upside down video. And you can see, kind of in keeping with my theme of, not a lot of special tools. I'm laying under the car, looking at what broke and figuring out how to make it a lot stronger. I'll locate those, drill some holes here that'll work for this bar or really any other bar. A considerable strengthening of the standard, what can you say, wimpy setup. Yeah, serious sunlight. But let's take a look here. After I marked those off yesterday evening, I carefully lined them up, center punch, drilled some holes. I'm using, let's take a look here, a couple of mini differential bolts. These have a 5/8 head and are very strong. And so dropping them in from above, when I bolt that up, at worst case, I'll be able to reach up with a 5/8 open to hang on to those. And it provides for studs on the underside to capture that right there. I mentioned that I drilled these holes exactly 3/8, and I was very careful in locating them. And I had this as a template. The other piece that holds the front bumper, it's kind of a weird looking dog leg that sticks out here with that one big stud that retains the bumper. But I've had a lot of practice at this sort of thing, so I know I kind of make it look easy. But if you don't get these holes perfectly positioned with a 3/8 drill, these bolts won't go in, and you'll be driving yourself crazy with a file trying to line them up. But, very careful attention to where you put that center punch. Use this as a template. Eyeball it, eyeball it, eyeball it. With some practice, you can really position these. I was able to just take them off the drill press, stick them on here, and start the bolts. And they fit barely into the holes that I drilled. You don't want it too sloppy, but, you could go up a size to make that a lot easier. If you got a 3/8 bolt and a 3/8 hole, you really got to be pretty precise. But now that right there is very tight, and I got these immensely strong studs hanging down to accept. Let's see, where's the hole? Okay. You can see what I've done here. You still have a range of adjustability, and I tried to position it right in the middle. This bar wanted to be a little bit further forward than the standard mount was, as weak as it was on the frame there. So it was kind of preloaded backward. I kind of moved it a little bit forward, and this ought to be an immensely strong mount even without another support bolt here, which will catch this, welded front upright if I wanted a bit more strength. Just slip the nuts with the big washers onto the studs hanging down. And these are the mini head stud nuts. These are the A+ flanged 3/8 24 nuts. And so at the end of our winter sunlight, you can see here, this side's fully bolted up. And what I did, the sway bars are always maybe a little bit flexed, so I don't want it to go on with a preload to one side or the other. And I think it had one before. I tried to adjust for it essentially by adjusting the length of these sleeves. Now you don't want this too short. And I go, wow, why don't you just make a stud and attach it to the lower shock mount here that I've added from my tube shock conversion partially installed? Well, it has to have this rod so that as this pivots, it pivots in an arc. If you attach it solidly and you got no arc, you got a problem. As soon as the suspension moves, something's going to get torn off, big sway bar or not. So you have to have some, that's why these things are always on some sort of stick. And so by adjusting the length of the sleeve here, I'm going to take out any kind of tendency to have preload. And the bar may not be perfectly square, but it's more important to adjust it to the car rather than force the car to adjust to the bar.